And in our very first story, for a lot of us, we had the opportunity to watch the newly rebooted DC universe, now with a proper studio setup and the head being James Gunn. And for all those who know James Gunn, started out as a writer and director, having done films like Slither, even wrote Army of the Dead, and did direct the Guardians of the Galaxy at Marvel, and it was phenomenal. And he did direct the Suicide Squad, and also recently has directed the DC Superman, and which has crossed the $600 million mark, and that is quite exciting. I'm sure Warner Brothers and DC really didn't think they could cross that margin. Well, it looks like with this newfound success and the plans they already have going on, he has announced that Man of Steel is the next movie after the Superman saga. I must say, it is not too surprising seeing the fact that Warner Brothers has, with this success of DC, I mean, the Superman movie being the first entry into the newly formed DCU, it does make sense that they would want to quickly follow it up before losing the fervor and passion that audiences have for this particular project. And I mean, looking at the past films from the DC itself, and also since Rising Tides, lifts up all ships, also some of the not so successful box office wise movies from Marvel, I'm sure the heads of DC weren't too expectant, or even Warner Brothers as the parent company wasn't so expectant of such box office results. And with that, having found these success, it is of no surprise that they would want to follow it up likewise with a second film. Obviously, 2 years from today isn't too far off, but within that period of looking at movie production, it does make sense. It is a reasonable time to have it in. July, you're looking at July 9th, which is 2027, which is 2 years, almost 2 years from the time of release of the Man of Steel itself. So it does make sense, and looks like exactly a year from when, not exactly, but almost an exact year from when Man of Superman was released, will be Woman of Tomorrow, which is Supergirl. And I think they want to make sure it is quite consistent in terms of its releases. And it does make sense. But I like the approach that James Gunn is going about this entire DCU, in a sense that his focus is ensuring that the story being told, or the script itself is formidable before production begins, rather than have a script that is not fully realized and go on set and have to, there would have to be tweaks. Of course, with every production, it looks like now the norm is to factor in reshoots. So there is there is the potential to always go back on set and work out some things into the script. But his approach is to ensure that everything is solid before you go into production. And it is quite interesting because the approach with which they are going, I mean, this particular project, the Man of Tomorrow, he has already hinted that it wouldn't be a direct sequel to Man of Steel. I mean, not Man of Steel, but Superman. And I don't know whether they've worked out well why it shouldn't be so. And my concern is how audiences didn't really receive well a sequel to, they were expectant of a sequel to Man of Steel, but it ended up being Batman versus Superman. And a lot of people who were diehard fans weren't so happy about it. So I'm sure whatever lessons they might have learned from the past, they are correcting it well here to ensure that it doesn't, throw certain fans off. But obviously, it looks like Man of Tomorrow, even though it may not be a direct sequel, still follows or still may follow from the story of the Superman that was shown a couple of months ago. So already they've dropped the what's it called, a picture of the perhaps what the concept may be about, and it has to do with Lex Luthor and the Man of Steel himself. Let me see. Let me project what they shared. Yeah. So I don't know what is. Yeah. So in your shot, you can see Lex Luthor in his iconic green and purple and green armor suit, and there you have David Corenswet's Superman holding a screwdriver with a smile on his face. So obviously, it looks like they one way or the other they might patch, bury the hatchet to an extent because you never know what may be going on in the mind of Lex Luthor. Looking at this image already, you can see that Lex Luthor is really very serious, hell bent on whatever mission he may be on. But Superman he is his usual affable self. So they will be working together, but it still gives me a little bit vibe of how Batman in Batman vs Superman you had Ben Affleck's Batman, Wayne going against Superman, and later they patched up just to fight, Doomsday. So I don't know how this would actually go, but it looks like it is something that we are we are yet to see how the story will go about. But obviously, the possibility of them working together, if you are going to deduce any, story or hint from this picture, it's very high. The very likelihood that they may work together is very high. And with James Gunn already stating that this story would involve so many other characters from the Superman movie that we watched, you're talking about Guy Gardner and then Mr. Terrific and Hawk Girl. It's very possible that it's going to be more of a team movie than a central focus being on Superman. Already in Superman, if you watch the movie, it still had the semblance of the team supporting him one way or the other, but it still ended up being his movie. That is, Clark Kent's movie or Superman's movie, Kal-El's movie. So obviously, this may go different from what we had in the past because it is, Man of Tomorrow. As to whether it may be the Man of Tomorrow is referring directly to Superman himself or maybe Lex Luthor, we cannot tell at the moment. But I think with the success of Superman, it looks like people, the characters in the film are well received. Particularly, perhaps this Superman is far well received than what we had in Man of Steel of Henry Cavill. I, for one, I still like, Henry Cavill, Superman, and I like the approach with which the James Gunn went about this. And the whole idea of the film, if you watch the entire Superman film, it feels very deliberate to go in a quasi opposite direction, from what we saw in the Man of Steel. And it almost has certain similarities with Man of Steel to an extent, but on a very lighter, bubbly note as compared to that's what we from what we saw in the Man of Steel. So yeah, it being the top grossing comic book movie of the year so far, it does mean that, listen, definitely they have reset the universe the way they want it. And going forward, no reference whatsoever will be given or attention will be given to whether it is successful enough to take over the DCEU. Now, as it seems, it looks like the DCU is successful and they are going on full gear with whatever plans they have in mind for the DCU. So it is quite interesting. And the Superman movie till date has made $611 million worldwide. And that is really, really successful. coming off, I think, a $220 million budget. They have not only broken even, but they have made their money, made some profit off the budget itself. So that is quite an interesting uh, take on it. And I think going forward, the key question would be who is going to be the major villain for this particular production. That is what is left to be discussed. In the first one, we had Lex Luthor and the Hammer of I'm forgotten the name of the country or the city, the fictional city in the film. But then it presupposes that Lex Luthor won't be the next villain. Maybe they may be at loggerheads from the very beginning of the movie, but going forward, it may be a different villain altogether. I'm sure some of the names that may come to mind is Doomsday, but Doomsday was recently used in Batman vs Superman, even in the TV series Lois and Superman or so. It also had, Doomsday in it. Maybe they could go in the vein of Brainiac or Genazord, but Genazord also was explored in Man of Steel. So I'm sure, knowing who James Gunn is, he may come up with a villain that we have no idea or never anticipated would be him. Brainiac is much of a possibility because we haven't really seen much of Brainiac in anything, in any live action rendition yet. I think the close one we nearly saw was going to be in, I think, Supergirl also. So there are still more options to explore when it comes to the possible villain, a very worthy opponent for Superman. And the interesting aspect is that if Lex Luthor sort of works alongside Superman, it means that whatever villain we're going to have in this would be far powerful even than Superman, maybe not just in strength, but intellect, as we know that Lex Luthor is very, one of the, I think, the most intellectual individual in the DC universe itself. So, well, there's a lot to explore, and I'm sure James Gunn is keeping the lid on it tight for nobody to know what exactly he has in store for us, just as he was able to do with the Hammer of Baravia or something. I think that's the name of the country. So it is quite interesting to know what he has in store for us. And I, for one, I watched the Superman. I enjoyed it, and I'd like to see where they go from there. So I am interested in seeing what they have in mind and what ideological differences. How would these two individuals work together as Lex Luthor hates everything about Superman in that movie? I don't know whether his prison sentence will give him a kind of reformation to be able to say, okay, understand what Superman is about, and I will support him. So let me know what you think about this new development with regards to the Man of Tomorrow and Gunn's take on the stated themes of kindness and hope. If you watch the film, the new punk rock now is being kind, to humanity. Let me know what you think by leaving your thoughts in the comment section down below.